What if growing up didn't feel exciting, but instead felt confusing, overwhelming, and completely out of control? That's the reality for the people living in this story. And before we get into everything, make sure to like and subscribe, because this isn't just a normal teen drama. This is one of the most intense, emotional, and chaotic series you'll ever watch. The story begins with Rue Bennett, a teenage girl who has been struggling with addiction for most of her life. From a young age, Rue was diagnosed with anxiety, OCD, and other mental health challenges that made her feel different from everyone around her. Instead of finding healthy ways to cope, she turned to drugs, which quickly became her escape from reality. By the time the series starts, Rue has already been through rehab after a near-fatal overdose, but despite everything she's been through, it's clear that she hasn't actually changed. She returns home, but instead of trying to stay clean, she immediately begins using again, showing just how deep her addiction really goes. Rue narrates the story, giving insight not only into her own life, but into the lives of the people around her. Her perspective is raw, honest, and often uncomfortable because she doesn't try to hide the truth. She explains things exactly as they are, even when it's dark or difficult to hear. One of the first major moments in the story is when Rue meets Jules Vaughn, a new girl who has just moved into town. Jules is completely different from Rue. She's confident, expressive, and seems fearless in a way that immediately draws Rue in. From the moment they meet, there's a connection between them that feels intense and almost instant. For Rue, Jules becomes more than just a friend. She becomes a reason to try and stay clean, someone who gives her life a sense of purpose that she's never really had before. But Jules is dealing with her own struggles. She is navigating her identity, her relationships, and her sense of self in a world that doesn't always understand her. Her storyline is complicated, emotional, and often painful as she tries to figure out who she is while dealing with people who don't always treat her with the respect she deserves. At the same time, the show introduces a range of other characters, each with their own storylines that slowly begin to connect. Nate Jacobs is one of the most complex and dangerous characters in the series. On the surface, he appears confident, popular, and in control, but beneath that image, he is deeply troubled. His behavior is shaped by his upbringing, particularly his relationship with his father, Cal, who has his own dark secrets. Nate's storyline quickly becomes one of the most intense in the series. He is controlling, manipulative, and capable of being extremely dangerous, especially in his relationship with his girlfriend, Maddie Perez. Their relationship is toxic, filled with power struggles, jealousy, and emotional manipulation. Maddie, on the other hand, is strong, confident, and unwilling to be controlled, which creates constant tension between them. As the story unfolds, it becomes clear that Nate's behavior is influenced by the secrets he has discovered about his father. Cal has been living a double life, hiding parts of himself that he doesn't want anyone to see. When Nate finds evidence of this, it deeply affects him, shaping the way he views relationships, control, and identity. Meanwhile, Kat Hernandez is going through her own transformation. At the start of the series, she feels insecure and invisible, struggling with her self-image and how others perceive her. But over time, she begins to explore a different side of herself, gaining confidence in ways that are both empowering and risky. Her journey is about control, identity, and the search for validation in a world that constantly judges her. Cassie Howard's storyline focuses on love, insecurity, and the need for validation. She is someone who wants to be loved so badly that she often makes decisions that hurt her in the long run. Her relationships are emotional and intense, but they are also unstable, reflecting her internal struggle with self-worth. Her sister, Lexi, is more observant and reserved, often watching everything unfold around her without being directly involved. But as the story progresses, it becomes clear that Lexi has her own perspective on everything, and her role becomes more important later on. As these storylines develop, Rue's addiction continues to be a central focus. Despite her connection with Jules, she struggles to stay clean, constantly battling the urge to escape reality. Her relationship with Jules becomes complicated, as her feelings grow stronger, but her addiction continues to create distance between them. One of the most significant turning points comes when Rue relapses again, showing that recovery is not a simple or linear process. Her struggles are portrayed in a way that feels real and unfiltered, highlighting the difficulty of trying to change when you're trapped in a cycle of addiction. At the same time, the tension between Nate, Maddie, and Jules begins to escalate. Nate becomes obsessed with Jules after discovering secrets about her, leading to a series of events that become increasingly dangerous. He manipulates situations, creates false narratives, and uses fear as a way to maintain control. As everything builds, the characters' lives begin to intersect more and more. Relationships become more complicated, secrets start to come out, and the consequences of people's actions become impossible to ignore. And this is only the beginning. As the story continues, everything begins to intensify, especially as Rue becomes more emotionally dependent on Jules. What started as a strong connection quickly turns into something deeper for Rue, almost like Jules becomes the one thing keeping her grounded. Rue convinces herself that as long as Jules is in her life, she can stay clean. But this creates a dangerous dynamic, because it means her recovery is no longer about her, it's about someone else. And when your stability depends entirely on another person, it's only a matter of time before things start to fall apart. Jules, on the other hand, doesn't fully understand the weight of what she represents to Rue. She cares about her, but she's also trying to figure out her own life, her identity, and her freedom. She doesn't want to feel trapped or responsible for someone else's well-being, which creates a growing distance between them. This difference in how they see the relationship slowly builds tension, even during moments where things seem fine on the surface. One of the biggest turning points in Season 1 comes during the carnival episode, where everything that has been building starts to explode. The environment itself is chaotic, loud, and overwhelming, which perfectly reflects what's happening internally with the characters. This is where relationships begin to crack under pressure. Nate's behavior becomes even more aggressive and controlling, especially toward Maddie, as their toxic dynamic reaches new levels. Their arguments escalate, emotions run high, and it becomes clear that their relationship is built on control rather than love. At the same time, Nate's obsession with Jules continues to grow in a disturbing way. After secretly communicating with her under a fake identity, he manipulates her emotionally, creating a situation where she feels vulnerable and exposed. When he finally confronts her in person, the power dynamic is completely one-sided. He uses fear and intimidation to control the situation, showing just how dangerous he really is. This moment is one of the most intense in the series, because it reveals the full extent of Nate's manipulation. Meanwhile, Kat continues to explore her new sense of confidence, but it begins to take her into risky territory. What started as a way to feel more in control of her life slowly turns into something that isolates her from real connections. She becomes more focused on validation and control, but in doing so, she starts to lose sight of what actually makes her happy. Cassie's storyline also becomes more emotional as her relationship struggles continue. She finds herself caught between wanting love and constantly being hurt by the people she trusts. Her vulnerability makes her one of the most emotionally affected characters, as she continues to make decisions based on how others perceive her rather than what she truly wants. As the season moves toward its climax, Rue's internal battle becomes more intense. Despite moments where she seems like she might be getting better, the reality is that she is still deeply trapped in her addiction. She lies to the people around her, hides her behavior, and continues to use, even when she knows the consequences. The final episodes of Season 1 bring everything to a breaking point. Rue plans to leave with Jules, believing that starting over somewhere else will solve her problems. For her, it represents escape, not just from her environment, but from herself. But when the moment actually comes, she hesitates. Deep down, she knows that running away won't fix anything. In a powerful and emotional scene, she chooses not to go, and Jules leaves without her. This moment is devastating because it shows the reality of their relationship. They care about each other, but they are not on the same path. Rue is left alone, and without Jules as her anchor, she falls back into her old patterns. The season ends with Rue relapsing again, showing that her journey is far from over. Moving into the special episodes, the story slows down and becomes more focused on character introspection. Rue's special episode takes place almost entirely in a diner, where she has a deep and honest conversation about her addiction, her mindset, and why she struggles to stay clean. This episode provides a deeper understanding of her character, showing that her addiction isn't just about the drugs, it's about how she sees the world and her place in it. Jules's special episode, on the other hand, explores her perspective in a way we haven't seen before. It gives insight into her identity, her past, and how she experiences the world. It also shows how her relationship with Rue affected her, highlighting the emotional complexity of their connection. When Season 2 begins, everything feels more intense, more chaotic, and more unpredictable. Rue's addiction has gotten worse, and she is now involved in more dangerous situations. She begins working with a drug dealer named Fez, who, despite being involved in illegal activities, is one of the few people who genuinely cares about her. Fez's character becomes more important as the story progresses, especially as his own life begins to unravel. The opening episode of Season 2 immediately sets the tone with a focus on Fez's backstory, showing how he ended up in the life he's living. It adds depth to his character, making it clear that he is more than just a side character. He is someone who has been shaped by his environment and circumstances. As the season continues, Rue becomes more reckless. She starts dealing with a dangerous drug supplier named Lori, entering a situation that she doesn't fully understand. This storyline adds a level of tension that goes beyond anything seen in Season 1, because the stakes are much higher. This isn't just about personal struggles anymore, this is about real danger. At the same time, relationships continue to shift. One of the biggest storylines in Season 2 involves Cassie and Nate. After everything that happened in Season 1, Cassie finds herself drawn to Nate despite knowing how dangerous and toxic he is. Their relationship is secretive, intense, and destructive, creating a situation that is bound to explode when the truth comes out. Maddie, unaware of what's happening behind her back, continues to deal with her own struggles, but when the truth is eventually revealed, it leads to one of the most explosive confrontations in the series. The tension between Cassie and Maddie builds slowly, but when it finally breaks, it's chaotic, emotional, and impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, Lexi begins to step into a more active role in the story. After spending so much time observing everyone else, she decides to tell her own version of events through a school play. This becomes one of the most unique and impactful parts of the series, because it forces the characters to see themselves from a different perspective. The play exposes truths, highlights insecurities, and creates reactions that range from emotional to explosive. Rue's storyline reaches one of its darkest points during Season 2. Her addiction spirals completely out of control, leading to a series of events where she loses everything. One of the most intense episodes follows her as she goes through withdrawal, running through the streets trying to escape the consequences of her actions. It's chaotic, fast-paced, and emotionally overwhelming, showing just how far she has fallen. Her relationships with the people around her begin to break down completely. She lies, manipulates, and pushes people away, including Jules, who once meant everything to her. This creates a sense of isolation that makes her situation even more dangerous. At the same time, the storyline involving Lori becomes more serious. Rue owes her a significant amount of money, and the consequences of that debt become increasingly threatening. This adds a level of danger that goes beyond personal struggle, showing that Rue is now involved in something much bigger than herself. As the season builds toward its conclusion, everything begins to collide. The play exposes hidden truths, relationships reach their breaking points, and the characters are forced to confront the reality of their actions. And still, nothing is truly resolved. As Season 2 moves toward its final episodes, everything that has been building throughout the story begins to collide in a way that feels chaotic, emotional, and completely unavoidable. Rue's life is at its lowest point. After everything she's done, lying to her family, betraying Jules, and getting involved with dangerous people, she is forced to confront the consequences of her actions in a way she never has before. Her addiction is no longer something she can hide or control. It's out in the open, and it's destroying everything around her. One of the most intense parts of this downfall is the situation with Lori. What started as a way for Rue to make money by dealing drugs quickly turns into something far more dangerous. Lori is not someone you can simply walk away from, and the debt Rue owes becomes a constant threat hanging over her. There's a moment where Rue ends up back at Lori's place, and the tension is almost unbearable. Lori's calm and emotionless behavior makes her even more terrifying because it's clear that she sees Rue as nothing more than an asset. This storyline introduces a level of danger that goes beyond anything Rue has faced before, suggesting that her life is now at risk in a very real way. At the same time, Rue's physical and emotional state continues to deteriorate. One of the most powerful sequences in the series follows her as she goes through withdrawal, running through neighborhoods, breaking into houses, and trying to escape both the people chasing her and the reality she can't avoid. The pacing of this moment is relentless, reflecting the chaos inside her mind. It's not just about the physical pain, it's about the desperation, the fear, and the complete loss of control. But eventually, that chaos begins to slow down. Rue reaches a point where she can't keep running anymore. She is forced to face everything she's been avoiding, including the damage she's caused to the people who care about her. This leads to a shift in her character. It's not a perfect or complete recovery, but it's the beginning of something different. For the first time, she starts to take small steps toward accountability. Meanwhile, the storyline surrounding Fez and Ashtray reaches a tragic and unforgettable conclusion. Throughout the series, Fez has been portrayed as someone who, despite being involved in crime, has a strong sense of loyalty and care for the people around him. His relationship with Ashtray is especially important, as he has taken on a protective role, almost like a brother or guardian. As the police begin to close in on them, the tension builds toward a final confrontation that feels inevitable. When the raid finally happens, everything unfolds quickly and violently. Ashtray, who has grown up in a world where violence feels normal, reacts in the only way he knows how. He fights back. The situation escalates rapidly, leading to a tragic outcome that changes everything. It's one of the most emotional and intense moments in the series, highlighting the consequences of the environment they've been living in. Fez, who had been trying to move towards something better, is left devastated by what happens. His storyline represents one of the clearest examples of how difficult it is to escape a life that you were born into. Even when you want to change, the past has a way of catching up to you. At the same time, Lexi's play reaches its conclusion, and it becomes one of the most impactful storytelling moments in the entire series. Through the play, Lexi presents her perspective on everything that has happened, the relationships, the struggles, the emotions that everyone has been dealing with. It forces the characters to see themselves in a way they never have before. For some, it's confronting. For others, it's painful. But for Lexi, it's a moment of growth. She steps out of the background and finally takes control of her own story. Her relationship with Fez, which had been slowly developing, adds another layer of emotional weight to everything happening around her. Cassie's storyline also reaches a breaking point. After everything that has happened with Nate and Maddie, she is forced to confront the reality of her actions. Her need for validation, her emotional vulnerability, and her inability to make healthy decisions all come crashing down at once. Her confrontation with Maddie is one of the most explosive moments in the series, filled with raw emotion and tension that has been building for a long time. Maddie, on the other hand, shows a different kind of strength. Despite everything she's been through, she begins to move forward in a way that feels more grounded. Her storyline becomes less about reacting to others and more about finding her own sense of control. Nate's story continues to show how deeply broken he is. His actions throughout the series have been driven by control, fear, and the influence of his father. In the later episodes, we see him begin to confront some of those issues, but it's clear that his journey is far from resolved. He remains one of the most unpredictable characters, someone who is capable of both vulnerability and danger. As the season comes to an end, Rue reflects on everything that has happened. Her narration shifts slightly, showing a small but noticeable change in her perspective. She acknowledges the pain, the mistakes, and the reality of her situation. But there's also a sense that she is beginning to understand herself in a way she didn't before. The ending doesn't give a perfect resolution. There are still unanswered questions, especially regarding Lori and the consequences of Rue's actions. There are still relationships that are broken, still emotions that haven't been fully resolved. But that's what makes the story feel real. Because Euphoria isn't about clean endings or perfect solutions. It's about the reality of growing up in a world where everything feels intense, confusing, and sometimes overwhelming. It's about addiction, identity, love, and the struggle to find meaning in situations that don't always make sense. By the end of what we've seen so far, Rue is not fixed. She's not completely healed. But she's different. She's aware in a way she wasn't before. And sometimes that's the first step towards something better. And at the same time, the other characters are also left in positions where their futures are uncertain. Cassie has to figure out who she is without relying on validation from others. Maddie is moving toward independence, but still carries the weight of everything she's experienced. Nate remains unpredictable, shaped by his past, but not fully defined by it. Lexi has found her voice, but now has to live with the consequences of telling her story. And W still don't know what comes next. Because the story isn't really about reaching an ending, it's about the process of becoming something, even when you don't fully understand what that is yet. And that's what makes it so powerful. Because in the end, Euphoria isn't just a story about these characters, it's about the reality that growing up doesn't come with clear answers. It comes with mistakes, with pain, with moments that feel impossible to get through, but also with the possibility that things can change, even if it takes time, even if it's messy, even if it's not perfect.